Welcome, everyone. Hello, I'm Allison Myers, and thanks to everyone for tuning in to Writers and Books celebration of Melanie Conroy Goldman's compelling debut novel, The Likely World, just released from Red Hen Press. So welcome, Melanie. It's such a pleasure and privilege to host you for the next 30 minutes or so.
It is a pleasure to be here.
So first we'll begin with a reading with you, Melanie, followed by conversation during which everyone in our audience is invited to use Zoom's Q&A function or the chat function to type comments or ask questions, which I'll do my very best to accommodate during the conversation part. And then we'll conclude with Melanie reading, again, very briefly from The Likely World. So please take it away, Melanie.
All right. Thank you so much for that introduction and for having me here. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm going to read right from the beginning, so it doesn't require much introduction, but I will tell you it ends at a cliffhanger, a little bit of a dark note. And when I do that reading at the end that Allison mentioned, I will let you know how it turned out. So I'm going to begin, and thanks again for coming. The black SUV pulls into my driveway on the evening of my 29th day sober. Junie is downstairs, bouncing in the safari seat in front of her cartoons. Twilight has fallen, but I've been trying and failing to work all day, and I've yet to pause to turn on the lamp. Soon my toddler will cry for her dinner. Everything is dim. Then, from deep within my labors, I perceive the scattering of gravel beneath car wheels, the noise of an engine shifting momentarily into drive. I hear it, and in an instant, it's like I'm high. Who lives in a pineapple under the sea? My nerves spark little signals pinging from knee to knuckle, from thigh to throat. Someone's here, someone's come. I stand, move toward the window with the soundlessness of a midnight mother, staying within the shadowed interior until I can peer into the scant view of the driveway. California plates, white bumper sticker on the rear bumper, rolled down window. The driver is only a nose and a forehead. From the cracked window, a wisp of cigarette smoke climbs, a whiff of campfire and molasses. Something sings in me. It's you, I think, and who are you? I tried, but I can't make the link. Then the driver's moment of indecision ends. The engine below revs, shifts into gear. I'm in the hallway, on the landing, taking the stairs. The lights from Junie's bouncy seat scatter a pattern against the walls. SpongeBob SquarePants, SpongeBob SquarePants. I reach the front door just as the car pulls out. The hand flicks the cigarette through the closing automatic window. I run. Don't you dare, I yell. I thump on the passenger door. In the tinted window, my own mad face and shoeless feet regard me, the gaping door of my suburban home behind. The driver might be no one. A stranger making a U-turn, or one of the bit player scumbags who accrue at the edges of lives like mine, but it doesn't feel like happenstance. Every flash and movement feels freighted with significance. You are here. You have come back for me. You're here. I focus in on the brightly reflective glass, the intangibly faint silhouette within. Man, woman, a lighter flares inside just as the street lamps illuminate. The world shifts into a yellower palette, washes of detail. There is a hesitation, a hanging pause, as if the person inside has finally recognized me. Do something, I goad the shimmering glass. Say something. The transmission shifts and then grinds as the driver throws the vehicle into reverse. I make out the image on the sticker I'd noticed upstairs. It is a pale green saguaro on a white oval field. The decal is familiar. Everything is familiar. The engine thrusts into drive and wheels off into the night. "Don't leave me," I call after it. And then, for reasons I can't discern, I say, "I'm sorry." But the driver is gone. The taillights vanish, and I'm returned to the twilight of a few moments earlier. The suburban street is precisely the same as before. Safe and bland, the sidewalks bathed in the glow of televisions. Only the still smoldering cigarette butt in the gutter testifies to my visitor. I pick it up. It's an off-brand, a half-inch from the filter, but I drag in the old familiar flavor and my chest throbs with loss and an unnameable shame, and everything becomes ash. SpongeBob SquarePants. Everything is as before, except I've been burned alive. I must go inside, close up my computer, give my daughter her dinner, proceed with the script of my nights. I must stay sober, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to go score a load of cloud and get as high as I know how. I hoist Junie from the bouncer and onto my hip. I put an applesauce and a tub of corn puffs into the diaper bag. She babbles brightly. She loves to go for a drive. It might seem unthinkable, but you only have to cop once with a small child in tow before it becomes perfectly ordinary, before you find yourself handing over her car seat to your dealer's 8-year-old daughter so you can eat what you need. It's a junkie stutter in my love for her, the need for what I eat, shorting the connection between my mother feeling and the care I owe her. First the drug always, and then whatever is left over for my daughter. Fern dorm, she gurgles as I strap her into the car seat, mend, tie. I'm not singular in these routines. There's a small elite sisterhood of users like me buying our Gerber peas and testing formula on our wrists as we coast from high to high. For a while, occasionally for a long while, we can pull it off. Each day we make 1,000 bad bargains, lie and say that we've insulated them. We say they don't notice the hungry wolf pacing the perimeter of our love, but my daughter knows my wolf. It is in the pitch of my voice, my shortened temper, in how everything suddenly must be done both quickly and perfectly. She knows all right. I haven't insulated her. She is late to talk, and her language is strange, but I understand what her fist and her little cough are telling me. It's happening again, she means, or don't let this happen again, or this is doing me yet more harm. Cloud users forget, like blackout drunks. We forget, and when we remember again, the familiar and the strange have swapped. Details have gone missing entirely, which is why, even though I've been waiting for it for 2 years, even though that flick of the cigarette pummeled my heart, I have no idea if the driver was a hookup or a husband, a savior or an enemy, but the return has cracked me open and now I need to get high. I'll stop there. I can't hear you.
I know, because I didn't unmute myself. Thank you so much for reading that. When I read the text, I was so compelled and drawn into the book, and just hearing you read it out loud is even more impactful. It's definitely, there's so much propulsion, and the interior voice is, the first person narration is also incredibly powerful, and you establish the voice immediately. I just think it's such a strong beginning, and I'm so glad you read that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So just to start off with some of the more obvious things, could you tell us about your choice of The Likely World as your title, which I love?
Oh, thank you.
Its significance, and when in the process of writing your manuscript it came to you.
Oh, that's a good question. Not right away, but pretty early is the short answer to when it came to me. Um, it was just a line that I was writing. And I knew that the users of the drug thought of themselves as inhabiting different worlds, and that they thought of each time that they took the drug as being a kind of a gamble. They would end up somewhere slightly different from where they'd been when they started taking the drug. Now, there's some dispute in the text as to whether that's actually the case, or it's just something that users falsely believe. But they all settle on they have to make a choice to be in one particular world if they're going to get clean. And just one of the characters called it the likely world, the worlds where they were likely to end up, as opposed to the perfect world. And I guess that's how it came about.
It's very memorable. I mean,
Thank you.
it keeps reverberating with me, and it's sort of a stand-in for, well, maybe this is the best we can do as an approximation of our ideal world.
Yeah, that's a perfect way of putting it and understanding it, that it's sort of about settling for the imperfect, right?
So your plot moves back and forth in time,
Yeah.
and though your chapters are clearly dated, I found myself feeling not so much disoriented as reoriented, as if reliving or anticipating Mellie, your main character's world, almost a kind of claustrophobia or perseverance. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about this narrative strategy, and whether your intention was to draw the reader into experiencing a kind of cloud mind.
Yeah, so there's one orienting thing that I chose not to do, which is to ever express how exactly these two narratives come together. And they come together in the plot, but we never really understand how much of what we're reading is in Mellie's head and how much of it is a narrative strategy. And I think there's just a little disorientation that comes from not articulating to what extent we're reading in the character's mind and to what extent we're time traveling. And I think that helps give it, hopefully, that slippery feel between the present and the past and the imagined and the real. I hope it doesn't get too disorienting, but that kind of slipperiness to time was really important to connecting the reader with the character's experience of time, which is also slippery.
Yeah, it was very effective, actually. I thought that it took a lot of discipline to pull that off, but when it's realized in the novel, it's very seamless. And I do feel that is one of the strategies that really brings the reader into the experience that is a completely other experience than anything any of us would have experienced, even through other drugs, because of this particular qualities of cloud. So I listened to your wonderful interview with Megan Mack on WXXI, and gained additional appreciation for authentically the novel explores adolescent girlhood, addiction, and recovery. You talked at some length about those that foci, and I would encourage everyone who's listening in on this conversation to please check out the wonderful conversation that Melanie and Megan had together. There's so much that's terrific about understanding the novel even more deeply after reading it. So I hope I'm not overreaching by confessing that I read The Likely World's centering of cloud, a seductive drug of forgetting, as a meditation on our nation's cultural amnesia.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you read it that way, and it's not against my intentions, but also like I want people to have their own interpretations of what cloud is. There's one specific aspect I think that dovetails with that I was thinking of, and it has to do with the Me Too movement, right? That for a really long time we all knew people who were harassers. We knew that it was going on. This happens culturally. It happens within organizations. You know, we just sort of thought, oh, that's a scumbag. You should steer clear of that person. But it wasn't something that we as a culture addressed or looked at directly, except, you know, whispered between friends or confessed late at night. And I just think about all the forgetting and erasure that has to take place for that to be the case. And that's only one example of that kind of thing that happens culturally. But I was thinking specifically of that because of the time period in which I wrote it, for sure.
Oh, good. I'm glad to have my reading of the novel validated. I think of all the revisionist histories that are still taught to school children these days.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Inconvenient truths about, you know, the founding of the country, how many people had to be enslaved or murdered, for instance. Yeah. So, so that I think makes the book superbly timely, because we are definitely we're in an era where we're grappling with these areas of amnesia, and we're being forced to see that we cannot be, we need to confront and engage. So the book, I think, is especially timely coming out as it is now. Yeah.
It just produces such cognitive dissonance to sort of both know and not acknowledge these massive structural pieces of our lives. And I guess it's one sort of psychological representation of how that might look like for an individual, you know, and I wouldn't want to claim to be describing any, you know, a universal experience of that at all.
Yeah, but that's what makes it so, how it makes it accessible to us as readers, because it is through the filter of this character. So we experience all the contradictions and the struggle. So I think it's superbly done.
Thank you.
So a question about your, the more professional side of this project. How did you and your wonderful agent, Bill Clegg, make the decision to publish with Red Hen Press? And what are your thoughts on publishing with a smaller university press rather than one of the major publishing houses? What are the advantages?
Well, we had someone at a big house who was interested in the book and went pretty far with us, and then just kind of had one revision that they wanted, and that was that I make cloud into a real drug instead of a fictional drug. And fortunately, my agent and I both understood that wasn't something I could do. It's not even about artistic integrity or, you know, or my vision. It's just, I didn't know how to make this book, which for me really centers on the fictional drug, into a memoir that's about a real drug. So Red Hen got the book immediately and understood it. And so that was really important. And also, it's just really different being with a small press, not just on the kind of front side, but Red Hen in particular fosters a cohort feeling among their authors. So we all kind of think of ourselves as the class of 2020, and we're sharing resources, and we're doing events together, and we're finding all these cool interactions between our work. And I think it's just such an interesting approach to how to make a small press into an advantage, and it's really working that way. And also, we're not alone in this weird time to be publishing.
Yeah, thanks for articulating that. I think small presses are doing such enormous work in the world of literature now, and they're so engaged with literary citizenship in ways that I think makes such a difference for an author, and making the connection between the author and the readers. And they do stay with their authors too. You're not like relegated to the remainder bin, which is wonderful.
It is.
I understand that you wrote several complete versions of The Likely World, all 362 pages of it, and I think some of your listeners would be interested to know how important were your first readers in your writing process, and also how does a novelist know when she's finished?
Well, okay, I would not have finished this book if it were not for my readers. I have a tiny little perfect writing group. There are 3 of us. We're all novelists, and that's great because a lot of traditional writing groups, you read a short portion, maybe 25 pages, but it's hard to give feedback on a portion of a novel. You really have to look at a chunk. So we're all novelists, and we'll just, when someone's got 100 pages, 200 pages, 300 pages, we'll sit down and read it and think about the whole, which is really critical, to get outside your head and to hear smart readers reply to you. So they were really, really important. And also patient because I kept rewriting. And I'm a real struggler as a writer. It's parts come easy as they do to everyone, but I really had to trial and error big parts of it, take them out, try them again. And I made them read almost every draft, the poor dears. So.
Well, they can be very proud of the product.
Yes, and my friend Sonia, who I think is on tonight because she said, hey, also read it and gave me some feedback, and she tells me that I took her advice. So, so that is good. I do listen to my reader.
I was talking with my friends Denise Abercrombie and Jonathan Anderson, poets, and they made a point of talking about how important that their writing practice is social. That it doesn't exist closed behind closed doors, and how important it is to write within a community you trust. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear that was part of your writing process. So for novelists looking for their first agent, their first publisher, what are the 3 most important pieces of advice you'd like to leave with them?
Oh, so that's great. The first is you got to push your manuscript as far as you can take it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to do all of what you can do without input before you send it out. For me, that meant getting readers. I needed some feedback before I sent it out, and I did revisions before I sent it out. So polish up to the maximum of your capabilities before you send out. The second thing I would say is cast a wide net. There are lots of different kinds of agents, and there are people who take the self-publishing route and are enormously successful that way. So I would say cast a wide net and be patient would be my number 2. And then my number 3 is if you are fortunate enough to find an agent or more than one, what you really want to make sure is that it's a fit, that you communicate well, that they love your work. You need a cheerleader, and I think it's not wrong to put that at the top of your list, someone who's passionate about what you do.
It's fantastic advice. Before I invite you to read again, I have a question from one of our guests. I always need to ask the author where the idea came from. Did you get the first sentence, the last sentence? What started the story for you?
That's a great question. I got the first sentence, and it's still the first sentence. And I was driving in a car when I got it, and I did not pull over. So that black SUV that I read about tonight was the first thing that appeared. Mellie was talking to me, and I'm sure you can hear her voice is not totally distinct from my voice, but to me she's a different person, and she spoke to me most of the way through that first chapter, and it was a gift, and you don't turn down a gift like that.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you to read for a few more minutes, please, Melanie, and then we'll come back with just a minute with some closing announcements.
Okay, great. So thanks again, everybody. And as I said before, I'm going to finish up with just the end of that chapter. So some stuff happens in between, but I want you to know how that evening turned out. And then I'm going to shift gears and read a little bit from the other timeline. And that timeline might represent Mellie's recovered memories. So they start when she's 16, but the portion I'm going to read tonight is just a little bit from the beginning of the New York chapter when she's in college. So I'll start with the end of that chapter I already read, then I'll break and let you know that I'm shifting gears, and then I'll read just a little passage from the college timeline. Junie coughs in my arms. The cool air and the wake of panic. It's not the details I'm missing, it's the very heart. I hold her gently, delicately, afraid. And then I begin to rock her, my grip tightening until she's secure in my arms. Her breathing eases, a warm patch spreading from where her mouth rests against my shirt. This is my daughter, I think. This is where I am. I have not used, but how close I am, still and always. How close and easy is the return. All right, so that's the end of that chapter, and I'm going to shift gears. This is New York City, 1993. Mellie is in college. Just a very brief taste of what that other narrative line sounds like. This is the tail end of a certain New York City. This version is the city of sirens and crack vials and cherry bombs going off beneath alarmed cars. This is the New York City of squats in the Lower East Side and people you know still living in Manhattan. I am aware downtown of several places where I can get a meal for under $4. More often, and at the moment, I am in my boyfriend's apartment uptown. I'm supposed to be here studying for finals, away from the distractions of the dorms, but he's paged me to say that he's on his way, that there's a thing we need to talk about. Now I have 30 minutes to prepare. It is twilight. In Morningside Park, a blue peculiar to this region of Manhattan descends. For a moment or an hour, the light of dusk and the light of the city are in equilibrium and everything appears washed of detail. There are no angles, no edges. At my best, I am like this hour, blurred. These twilight moments, I am bodiless, adrift in the murky blue. I have no hunger for things I cannot have, no worry over the weight of my mistakes. And I'll leave it there.
Melanie, thank you so much for spending this time with us, giving us, those who haven't yet read this wonderful book, The Likely World, which I insist is a page turner, and you will actually get through it very quickly. It is that compelling. And for spending some time with us tonight. You can look for The Likely World at Ampersand Books, which is Writers and Books indie bookstore online, and encourage you to frequent your favorite indie bookstore to find The Likely World. And I hope everyone will return to a half an hour with poet Lauren Camp on September 3rd. And please tune in to www.wab.org, sign up on for our e-blast so you can keep up with all of our announcements for wonderful things like Melanie, Conroy Goldman tonight, and visiting authors to come. So thank you again, Melanie. It was wonderful to hear you read. It was such a pleasure and a privilege to have you with Writers and Books this evening.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure and a privilege for me too. And Writers and Books is just such a great organization. When I was living in Rochester, it was the place where I found other writers and readers, and you guys just do great work keeping the arts alive in Monroe County. So thank you.
Thank you for your kind words. Good night, everyone. Thank you for being with us.
Good night.